Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening, everyone. My name is Nate. I also go by Hockey Boy Nate, and today we can finally pinpoint a day as to when severe weather will be back. We've been talking about this for quite some time and to how severe weather can return, and we now have a name and a date and a point of interest, as I like to call it. So if you guys want to hear more about that information and more information as it goes along, please be sure to subscribe and turn on that notification bell and like the video so that it can help me get on YouTube's algorithm so that I can get out to more people's recommended feeds. Anyways, here's the Storm Prediction Center. We go to this website every single day and every single video. And for the next 3 days, we have marginal risks here, which will be mainly localized in Florida. There will be a couple extra marginals that will extend up the eastern coast, but for the most part, it'll be localized in Florida because of our stationary boundary that we've been talking about and how that has been limiting our severe weather for the most part. But then you also see our severe risk here on Friday, which just so happens to be my birthday, and that time last year there was some severe weather as well. So I guess I wasn't really able to celebrate that birthday all too well. But I guess with our event that could be happening here on Friday, I won't be able to celebrate it either. So when duty calls, you really gotta just kind of go with the flow. You know what I mean? So we have our severe risk on Friday, which we will discuss further, but let's talk about our marginals here for now. So we have a marginal risk, which includes the furthest northeastern part of North Carolina, as well as the central parts of Florida, maybe even south central parts of Florida, which will include Cape Coral, Port St. Lucie, West Palm Beach, Palm Bay, and Melbourne. So if you live in those areas, you guys have a small risk for severe weather, a marginal or a 1 out of 5, as we like to call it, on the severe scale. The threat for hail is there, a 5% chance of you getting hail over 1 inch within 25 miles of a spot, as well as wind gusts above 58 miles per hour within 25 miles of a spot. And not really a huge tornado risk here today, all of that being less than 2% according to the Storm Prediction Center, which I very much so agree with. So if you guys live in these areas, it's just mainly going to be a very gusty wind and a hail threat for you all, maybe even a flooding risk, because people in Florida have been getting non-stop rain over the past couple of days, maybe even the past week. So that really won't go away, because here's day 2. The day 2 outlook is in the exact same spot that we saw. Maybe it includes a bit of Tampa and a bit of Orlando as well, but definitely still something that even into tomorrow, you guys got to really monitor. The 5% chance for hail still lingers, 5% chance for wind still lingers, and you even have a 2% chance for tornadoes that will be able to gather itself here within Tampa and Orlando and Clearwater and Lakeland. So, and even a little bit further south of that too. So if you guys live over there, you guys really need to monitor your weather, stay weather aware, and be able to know what to do in case if you are within the respective warnings, whether it's a severe weather, severe thunderstorm warning, or a tornado warning, or even a flash flood warning. If you're in any one of those, you need to know what to do when you get into that situation. And then we have our day 3 outlook, which is up into the northeast. This is pretty interesting here because number one, the stationary boundary moves off, and you have your new low pressure system that actually gathers itself, and this is what actually creates that second snowstorm. I haven't talked about the snowstorm on this channel a whole lot, but there's another snowstorm that'll come on through and add a bit more snow to the northeast. But you also have the threat for severe weather here in places like DC and Baltimore, as well as Philly and New York. And so if you live in those areas, you guys really need to monitor the storm as well, including areas like Norfolk and Virginia Beach, heading all the way up into places like Ocean City, all of Dover and Delaware, heading all the way up into New Jersey and even the Long Island areas. You guys definitely need to monitor that. Then if we take a look at our day 4 through 8 outlook, we move on to day 5, and you can see this massive slight risk here that has been issued for portions of southern Oklahoma and central to northern parts of Texas. This does include Dallas, Fort Worth, and San Antonio. So if you guys live over here, you guys really need to monitor that. Also, Austin and Oklahoma City, you guys are also in this 15%. And we'll get a bit more into the placement of this 15% and whether it could expand or not, whether it's north, south, east, or west a bit later on in the video. But this is definitely something that we're going to want to continue to watch as this continues to move on through. And, you know, with the 15% chance for severe storms, this is really something that we've been watching for quite some time in regards to the pattern and how it was going to shift. It was going to become a bit more of a strong ridge and a strong trough for a little bit, for the most part. But as of right now, this is our next severe weather event, and that could continue to linger further on into places like the deep south and the south and east. So definitely something that you're going to have to continue to watch out for as we get closer and closer to the day. As the models change, we'll have a lot more information for you all, but this is pretty much all that we have. So the GFS model, this is one of the long-range models that we use here. This is how it plays out for the most part. You can see here that your low pressure, which will begin to create some severe weather here for the mid-Atlantic into the northeast, is placed over the Midwest right now near Wisconsin, northern Michigan, into Lake Michigan, Huron, and Superior. Then you also have your stationary boundary right here. This is what's going to create all of your severe storms in Florida. You also have a band that is extending. I believe this will most likely be a cold front from this low pressure system, and that's also creating some more snow here in the Rockies all the way into the northern plains. And so as this moves along, you can see how your low pressure system starts to go a bit further and further to the east. Your stationary boundary, I want you guys to watch this real quickly. As this continues to move off, that will continue to subside, and your stationary boundary will no longer linger into parts of Florida. So you guys are expected to get expected to be done with your storms by Wednesday. Wednesday is when it'll most likely be over. So here's 8 a.m. on Tuesday, and you still have that lingering boundary. You can see how it continues to move on through, but then that'll move off as soon as this low pressure moves in. You can see your low pressure system moves up through. Here is your snowstorm that we were mentioning earlier, and right along the snowstorm is where we can see the potential for some severe weather as well. The difference between the warm air and cold air, between the cold front, which is what the snowstorm is riding on, and this warm front that has basically advected some warm air out in front of this system, could bring the potential for some severe weather here into the northeast. So we'll watch it as it continues to move on through. This is 2 a.m. Eastern Daylight Time, and you can see how your snowstorm continues to kick up. New low pressure forms off of this because of how the trough actually just continues to dig on through here. We'll take a look at that in a bit with the wind shear. But right along here is where you can expect some severe weather. And most of you might be asking, well, is it too cold for severe weather? And to which I reply, severe weather can happen in any condition as long as it has energy for it. So if you still have a displacement between warmer air or even just cool air at the surface, and you have really cold air in the atmosphere, that displacement will create energy for thunderstorms to be able to develop, and maybe even severe thunderstorms. So definitely something that everyone's going to have to continue to monitor. Albeit they're still rare that they happen, because usually with these storms that move on through to the north and east, or these nor'easters, if you will, usually when they move on through, they don't typically have a lot of energy because of the cold Arctic air in the rear of it. But it's still something that we're going to have to want to monitor as this continues to progress along. But I mentioned before, I said your stationary boundary is most likely going to be out of the way. Would not be surprised if there was a marginal risk here in southern parts of Florida, like near Miami and stuff like that. But this is definitely something that will most likely be out of our way for the most part, especially as this snowstorm continues to move on through. Speaking of snowstorms, take a look at this wide area of snow here expected for the Northeast. This will most likely be one of your final cold shots of the year, in my opinion, because once we get into this pattern, there will probably not be a whole lot of whole lot of snow that'll begin to seep on through, but you guys still might get some shots of, winter storm, maybe two. But for the most part, right here, widespread area of snow that'll bring a lot of wintry mix and even snow showers to the Northeast. Places like West Virginia all the way into Ohio and Pennsylvania, upstate New York, upstate Vermont and New Hampshire, all the way into Maine. Places closer to the coast most likely won't get anything. So if you live to places like New Jersey, Delaware, all the way into New England, you guys really aren't supposed to get anything. More or less because of the placement with the low pressure system. It's been pretty consistent with how it's been over land. So you'll have your warm air that'll intrude towards the coast, and that's what will bring your severe weather threat. And B, because there's just been too much warm air that has been subsiding over that general vicinity anyways. So there really isn't a good chance for snow if you guys live closer to the coast. But if you live a bit further upstate, then you guys most likely will get some snow. As this continues to progress on through, we have our low pressure that moves off the coast, and we have our new low pressure that is forming here within the Rockies. And as that continues to push on through, this will start to impact places like Oklahoma and Texas again. And so you can see how the low pressure system kind of just settles here. It doesn't really move a whole lot, but by Thursday here in the afternoon, this is when stuff starts to really form here, and you get another low pressure that starts to force this low pressure. You get a lot of strong backing with all this, and how the jet stream will start to dip with the troughing, and you can begin to see here by Friday morning your new low pressure system with the other two starting to merge, and how this continues to congeal. So by Friday evening, April 23rd, you can see a lot of these thunderstorms that are really starting to form out here in Texas and Oklahoma, even into Louisiana. Your low pressure system, which is right here in the northern panhandle. And I want you guys to continue to watch this as this continues to move on through. The placement of the low pressure system, because that's what's going to really determine as to where, which areas get severe weather. And that's what we're going to really want to focus on. So let's take a look at the parameters here of this event. We'll go on through here. So here is Friday. So we'll go on to the temperature first off. You can see for the most part, relatively modest temperatures within this event. You can see here by the afternoon hours here, even into the evening hours on April 23rd, you can see a bunch of these blues and these kind of yellows. And these blues and yellows indicate 40 to 50 degree temperatures for the most part. So it's relatively cold here in places like Oklahoma and northern Texas. But then a bit further to the west here in places like Amarillo and Lubbock, you have temperatures that are in like the 70s and 80s. And you also have temperatures a bit further south that are in the 70s and 80s as well. So that's something to keep in mind, that the GFS is picking up on a lot of cold air here that's going to linger, and that's going to potentially make it so that severe weather may or not be localized a bit more either to the west or the south of Oklahoma and northern Texas. But if we go over to the Euro, I'm just doing this out of curiosity. The Euro actually says that there's a lot more moisture return with the Gulf of Mexico actually bringing up that moisture a bit more into places like Oklahoma and northern Texas. So that is something that we're going to want to continue to monitor. A lot of widespread storms that has been forecasted from this. And so as that continues to move on through, we're going to have to continue to really want to watch this. I have noticed that the Euro has been the more aggressive model of the two in regards to the placement of this event. But still, something that we're going to want to continue to monitor with the trends as this continues to get closer. So we'll take a look a bit further. Dew points here. According to the GFS, the dew points stay relatively moist here in central to southern parts of Texas, which you can expect that. It's closer to the Gulf of Mexico. But the GFS, once again, is showing that there is not as much moisture return within this event. You have your dry line that's in place right here. You have your cold front, your secondary cold front, which is a bit more towards the rear of the low pressure system. Actually, it would be a bit more right about here, maybe with the mountains. It's kind of lagging a bit, but you also have just a couple of cold fronts right within here, and your warm front, which will be lagging out and drawing in that moisture. But the dew points here, for the most part, according to the GFS, is going to be lagging behind. But then, if you take a look, let me just go to the 0Z run here real quickly. If you take a look here for Friday, according to the Euro, moisture is not an issue whatsoever. I mean, look at this. You have your dew points, which get all the way up into Oklahoma, that are in the 60s for the most part. You even have some near Dallas-Fort Worth that are in the upper 60s, and that's a lot of moisture for the most part. You also have your well-defined dry line with your low-pressure system right about here. So the one thing that I am interested about is how the GFS's low-pressure system is a bit further behind here towards the northern panhandle and the western panhandle of Oklahoma heading into New Mexico, whereas the Euro's low-pressure system is a bit further toward the south and east, and that could indicate some stronger severe weather for places like Oklahoma City and Dallas-Fort Worth. So depending upon where this low-pressure system is placed, right here in the corner, so whenever you have this kind of corner-ish area right here, this is where you can see your biggest risk of strong, severe storms. And so depending upon where this low-pressure system is placed, you guys could definitely see some severe weather, maybe even strong severe weather that could form within your area. So that's something that we're going to want to continue to monitor for the most part. Heading back over to the GFS, we're going to talk about the CAPE, convective available potential energy. This is the energy that fuels thunderstorms, more or less, allows it to develop or sustain for the most part. And so just by looking at the energy according to the GFS, very skinny and narrow area along the cold front here, which is more or less located near Amarillo and Lubbock. But you have a lot of energy here in southern parts of Texas. It's more or less the same thing here, whereas the Euro, which we're going back to the 60 again, kind of stupid, but the Euro here on Friday says a lot more sample and lot more energy here in the atmosphere that is widespread over the warned area. So you can see how your low pressure system is right about here, northern Texas, into Oklahoma. You have your energy. The yellows indicate almost 2,000, maybe even some of the oranges indicating 2,500 joules per kilogram of CAPE. Typically, you want over 2,000 to consider strong storms. So you have a lot of energy here for the most part into parts of Oklahoma and Texas. And that is very interesting for the most part. One thing that is pretty consistent in regards to these models is the wind shear. The wind shear has actually been really consistent in regards to how much there is going to be or how strong it's going to be. And so by taking a look at the 500 millibar wind shear, which is around 6 kilometers up in the sky, you can see these greens and these brighter greens, almost this kind of tan or orange colors. And that actually indicates about 40 to 50, almost 60 if you're getting into the tans in knots. So this is in knots, not miles per hour, but some decently strong wind shear here. You would want at least 40 to 45 knots of wind shear in order to get thunderstorms, or strong thunderstorms, I should say. You can get no wind shear to get thunderstorms in general, but in order to get strong thunderstorms, 40 to 45 knots, in my honest opinion, is right what you want to look for. And so you can see right over the warned area, there is indeed a plethora amount of wind shear here, and even the Euro agrees with that with that analogy as well. The analysis with this, maybe even some stronger wind shear in some spots that could peak up around 60 to maybe even 65 knots. So really consistent here in regards to the amount of wind shear that is present. It's just the energy. Will there be any lingering factors within this event? Will the storms, will there not be enough moisture return from the Gulf of Mexico to be able to fuel this event? We'll have to continue to monitor that as that continues to move along. I've been talking about the placement of the low pressure system and how it's been pretty inconsistent for the most part. But if we take a look at the model trend loop, which basically looks at what the past model runs have said from the GFS, we can actually see trends within that pattern. So this was issued here on the 16th of in the morning of the 16th, right around 8 a.m. For the GFS, and it goes all the way to today as to what the GFS has trended and what the model runs have actually progressed over time. So we can take a look at what the trends have been as this continues to move on through. You can see a lot of scattered convection. This is when the GFS has really started to pick up on the threat for severe weather here, which would have been at hour 162 here on the morning of the 17th. And you can see a lot of scattered convection originally here into places like the deep south, but then as that has continued to move on through, the GFS has progressed a lot further to the west with its severe weather, and as that continues to move on through, you can see how the severe weather is now mainly plagued to northern parts of Texas, southern parts of Oklahoma, even parts of Louisiana. Louisiana could get into the action in some of these areas. But here's your placement of the low pressure system here with the GFS. And this is really interesting to note because the low pressure system has continued to go towards the west over time. It originally excuse me, I'm getting choked up because I sneezed. The low pressure system was originally over here towards Oklahoma and Arkansas. And so as this has continued to trend to the west, I'm wondering if that is something that we're going to want to continue to monitor. Maybe some areas further west than, Dallas, Fort Worth, Oklahoma City could get into the action, because as this has continued to progress, as I've mentioned, for the third time already, feel like a broken record, low pressure system is a bit further to the west than it was. So really something that we're going to want to watch for the most part. By the way, here was your low pressure system here on this frame, and as that continues to move on through, it also has gone a bit further north. Here was your low pressure as well, which was near Midland. So this kind of just, taking its grand old time to really materialize. But it was originally right about here. Then again, over the past day, it's moved off to the north. So it's really done this kind of C, if you will. And models will continue to self-correct itself as it continues to get closer and closer to an event, because as it gets closer, it'll get more accurate with the amount of data that it has and how things have come into fruition in the real world. So that's something that we're going to want to watch too. But another thing that we're going to watch is what the Euro model has been trending as well. So just by looking on through, you can see your low pressure system originally was here in Oklahoma. It was the Euro actually picked up on this model relatively early for the most part, but then it subsided. There wasn't really the idea for severe weather until around hour 174, into which you had your low pressure system begin to check in again. And for the most part, the low pressure system has actually been pretty consistent with placement according to the Euro model, to where it's mostly stayed within the northern panhandle, more or less a bit further south and east of where the GFS has placed its low pressure system. So as of right now, if we were to have our low pressure system right here in itself, then yeah, we could see right within that 15% that the Storm Prediction Center indicated, right within that 15% area, you could 100% see your severe storms if we were going based off of what the Euro said. The GFS agrees that there could be some severe weather here, which is the reason why the Storm Prediction Center has issued a 15% chance for storms here on Friday. But then if this low pressure system were to continue to move off to the west as if this moved off to the west, as it has been trending ever so slightly that it would, then you could potentially see some more areas that are even west of Dallas-Fort Worth and Oklahoma City to potentially get into this action as well. So that's definitely something that we're going to want to watch with all of this. One thing that I do want to do is I want to take a couple of soundings before we move on. This is going to be a little bit of a lengthy video, but a lot of things to discuss with this, so that as we move on forward, we will have less things to discuss in our future videos. But as I said, if you guys want to continue to stay monitored with this, we do live in-depth analysis on these storms whenever the events come around. I most likely will be live streaming this if it has a 5% chance for tornadoes, which the way it's trending, it very well could. So if you guys want to stay tuned for that, on Friday, turn on the notification bell so that whenever I do live stream, I may be able to get the information out for you all. But just by taking a look at what the models have kind of picked up on, the GFS says there could be a lot of capping inversion towards the cold front with this. But the one thing I will say is that the wind profiles are really good here, according to the GFS. If there was no capping inversion here, I would not be questioning a severe weather event at all. But for the most part here with the Euro, it most likely is leaning towards the event that could be coming into fruition. I'll even take a sounding to some of the areas with the most amount of CAPE. And the one thing that the Euro has that's not with the GFS is the wind shear is a bit lacking for the most part in regards to timing. But you do have a lot of energy and you have no capping inversion. Your energy is very good for the most part. So I would not be surprised if you saw some storms that could form within central parts of Texas. Your wind shear for the most part with this just seems to be lacking for the most part. But I wouldn't really pay attention to the Euro for the most part with its wind shear, especially with its soundings, because it can get a lot of very much so wonky and incorrect, in my honest opinion. That's the reason why I look at the GFS for the wind shear for the most part, and just by looking at this photograph, it does look like we could have some tornadic potential with these storms, and so that is definitely something we're going to want to watch. You guys might be looking at me and saying, photograph, what the heck does that mean? Well, this actually is, if you could imagine a weather balloon being lofted from the ground and you tracking it with your own little radar, you can see the track of the weather balloon as it moves up higher and higher into the atmosphere as to where it goes. And so the one thing that I look at that indicates tornadic potential is looking at this red line here, this line from the surface to 3 kilometers up in the sky. If this has a general curling off to the right, then this indicates that a storm could be supercellular, maybe even tornadic. And so, just by me looking at it, because it does curl off to the right, because the critical angle, which if you get closer to 90, your critical angle, if your critical angle gets closer to 90, that could indicate some stronger, more well-defined supercells. So it is around 83, which for most of you might be thinking, oh, that's 7 off. But usually we get into like the 50s or the 120s and stuff like that. And so if you get closer and closer to 90, that's when you can get some really well-defined storms. And that is something that we're going to want to monitor for the most part. As well as storm motion could be indicating right-moving supercells, which could indicate some strong potential for severe weather, maybe even tornadic weather, as that continues to move on through. But we just don't have enough information to say definitively that there's going to be a lot of energy and a lot of wind shear, because the models are still disagreeing for the most part. But the one thing that we can move off of and move on through with is what's happening afterwards. And we don't have a lot of information on this either, but you still have your low pressure system that's moving on through into the deep south and into the south and east. And you can see that low pressure that will continue to move on through. We're taking a look at Saturday here, and you can see here it is. And here's your severe weather for the most part here in the deep south. That'll continue to linger from Saturday all the way through into Sunday. And then this is when something gets, this is when it gets really interesting for the most part, because I could sit here all day and talk about what's going to happen. But you have another low pressure that's coming on through. here towards the latter stages into the beginning of next week. And this is when you can get another round of severe storms that could move on through. And by Tuesday, the 27th, this is when we can start to expect some more severe weather, or at least around that time frame as to when severe weather could come back again and ramp up even further. So this is definitely something that we're going to want to watch as this continues to move on through. The GFS is actually saying here on Wednesday a very well-defined low-pressure system with a warm front and a very strong cold front here on the southern end of it that we really need to monitor. So it's not just the end of this weekend. It's heading through into the next week and how we're going to be into this very favorable pattern for the most part. And so we definitely need to continue to monitor this as this moves on through. But just taking a look again here at the southeast, you can see here on Saturday morning into the afternoon hours, your warm front mainly stays into the northern parts of the deep south, but the further closer towards the coastline, you can definitely see some prefrontal convection, which could indicate some severe storms as well. We don't have a whole lot of information besides, it's going to be relatively moist for the most part. Dew points are in the 60s to 70s. 70s is really good for the most part. So you have your dew points there, which are decent for the most part. You also have energy, your convective available potential energy, which stays under that warm front. You also have your cold front, so you have a lot of energy here for the deep south again. Another round of severe storms that could move on through to places south of Jackson, more or less into Mobile, into Biloxi, New Orleans, into Pensacola and some of those areas. But as for right now, this does seem to be localized a bit further to the south, south of Birmingham, south of Jackson, Mississippi, south of Tupelo, south of Tennessee. So any of these areas that are in these like greens and oranges down here, disregard this for now. But any of these areas right here could see some the chance for severe weather as it moves on through. And then Sunday, Florida, as I said, Florida is going to Florida. There's always energy in Florida, and there's always going to be rain in Florida. And so the potential for some severe weather after days of rain, including from now until most likely Wednesday, you'll get another shot of severe weather here on Sunday. So that is definitely something that we're going to want to monitor. All right, that's going to be pretty much it here for this video. As I said, I hope you guys enjoyed this for the most part. This in-depth discussion as to what most likely is going to happen for the next week, even into next week. I'm really concerned about the threat for severe weather, especially next week, because I've been actually looking at that event from the 27th and the 28th really closely. It's very hard for me to determine as to what's exactly going to happen this far out. But what's happening on Friday here on the 23rd to the 25th is, a good warm up as to what could be happening into May. And Friday is really going to be interesting in regards to how the models play out. And so if you guys did enjoy this video, please be sure to leave a like, subscribe if you're new, and turn on notifications, as well as share this with friends and family and on social media. Once we get closer and closer to the event, I'll then shift my analysis to not as much of a widespread spectrum and more or less into a two-part, two sections of the video, to where I'll say what the risks are and I'll say what the timings are of this of these storms, and then for the people who may want to stick around to talk a bit more in depth as to what could be happening within this structure of the low pressure system. So if you guys are excited for that, as I said, please be sure to subscribe, turn on notifications, like the video so I can get onto to YouTube's algorithm and people's recommended feeds. Any way to get this word out so that people may be able to understand what's going to be happening. Share this on social media. Follow me on social media. Join my Discord server, which is in the link in the description down below. Also, follow me on Twitter. And yeah, that would be great for the most part. One final thing. I know I've been prolonging, most people because, they want the video to end already. But I do have to thank our sponsors for the most part. We do have 9 of them, which is amazing, the fact that we actually have sponsors to begin with. So Anthony Miller, Melissa Wallace, Risa, Nightmare, Cryptomaria, Marie Hall, Tanner, Theresa, and Hockey Mama. You guys are amazing. You know, I wouldn't be able to do this without you all, so the fact that you guys have, you know, sponsored me is absolutely amazing, and I really do appreciate it. So thank you so much. And yeah, that's going to do it for me, guys. My name's Nate. I also go by Hockey Boy Nate. I'll see you guys tomorrow in the next severe weather discussion that we have here. So peace out, everyone. Pew!